Hello and welcome to RS Agarwal's IAS. In this video of the Daily News Express, let us discuss the important topics appearing in the Hindu newspaper dated 20th October 2020. Let us start. The first editorial is related to the pandemic and some good news which the Department of Science and Technology has given us. So recently, the Department of Science and Technology has set up a committee consisting of several members who include doctors, experts, mathematicians to forecast the growth of pandemic in the country. Before this, we also need to know that the ministry has released a report that by the February of 2021, 50% of India will be affected with COVID-19. But here, the things are a little bit different, and the aspect that's been put forth here is that how the COVID-19 pandemic will subside or reduce in the country. Now, this editorial says, which speaks about the report given by this expert committee, it says that India has passed the peak that was the COVID-19 peak in the month of September itself. Now we are moving towards a time where until we hit December, there will be reduction in 50,000 cases of COVID-19 in India. It also says that in the month of February, there will be only minimal number of infections and not many infections. It must also be noted that minimal number of infections does not mean zero infections, it means only minimal number of infections. That means after February, we can see that this virus as such will subside. But this can only be a reality when some conditions are followed or it is subject to some conditions. Now, what are these conditions? First, the virus should not mutate. The virus should not mutate means the virus should not take new forms. Virus should not take new generations or make new multiplications of itself, so that the current scenario based on which this calculation is made will be disrupted, or the current scenario where we are aware of what the virus is and how it deals with can be tackled with. Apart from this, the second condition is our antibodies have to be durable in nature. They have to be strengthened with the right kind of nutrition, with the right kind of diet, with the right kind of physical activity, so that we are able to fight the virus and we develop some kind of an immunity where we become immune to virus, and then we also stop the passing of the virus to the other people. Apart from this, the author also talks about restrictions or the measures in general that we take. He talks about restrictions, means he is not talking about the lockdown. He's talking about the restrictions that we take, that is, we wash our hands, we wear a mask, we do not go out for unnecessary reasons, we maintain social distancing, we maintain sanitation, we maintain hygiene. All these things are subjecting to restriction. If this is done, we will not be fighting the pandemic all over again, but we will be in a situation where the pandemic will subside. The editorial and the author also says that lockdown is not necessary. Now the lockdown is not necessary. Only thing we can do is have containment zones or have red zones as such, where the coronavirus is contained and no nationwide or statewide lockdown is needed. Next point the author makes is that the lockdown that was done previously has bared fruit and has been very helpful, because if this lockdown wouldn't exist, this thing would be pushed till April or May. There will be more stalling of the issue. So hence this is a little bit of good news for us, but the good news only comes when we are able to make sure these measures are maintained. Well, the mutation of the virus is not in our hands, but the development of antibodies in the body and making of restrictions is all in our hands, and if we are doing this in a proper manner, then we will be able to fight the virus. But we are also aware of the fact that the health ministry has also said that by February 2021, 50% of Indians will be affected with coronavirus. Now, that does not mean all 50% will fall sick, or all 50% will be admitted in the hospitals, or all 50% will be quarantined. This means most of them in 50% will have the immunity to make sure they don't develop any kind of worsening symptoms and they don't fall that sick that they have to be quarantined. But some will be affected with it very badly, and some will have to deal with the problems of the coronavirus. But all we can do as individuals, as citizens of the country, is make sure we don't become the spreaders of the virus. And if we have some kind of symptoms, which is fever, body ache, joint pain, cough, difficulty in breathing, throat ache as such, we get ourselves tested. This also has the aspect of loose motions. If you're suffering from loose motions because of and combined with all these diseases, it is sorry, with all these symptoms, it is very good for you to go get yourself tested. And if you test positive, make sure you are quarantined and you don't spread this disease. Please make sure you take it seriously, because you might fight it off, you might be able to take care of yourself, but all the others who have low immunity, starting from your parents, starting from your grandparents, starting from your neighbors, will not be able to fight the disease most of the time. So we as citizens have also need to take the right kind of actions when it comes to this virus. I think this concept is clear. This editorial has been explained. Let us move on to the next topic. Here we are talking about another pandemic which is called as the HIV, that is human immunovirus. This is the virus which causes the disease called as AIDS, or the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Right? This is a clear idea. This topic caters to GS paper 2 and 3 also as your prelims examination. Now we know that HIV is the pandemic which was existent and is still existent today. Is one of the most grave and serious diseases that the world is fighting. But here again we have some good news to know and understand from the point of view of health in the country. Now, the 2019 estimates for the HIV virus has been released. It has been released by NACO, that is National AIDS Control Organization, that you're aware of, which comes under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, with the support of UN AIDS, which is an international organization which is a part of the UN to fight against AIDS. Now, this 2019 estimates say that there has been 66% reduction in the cases, HIV cases among children. 66% reduction in the HIV cases among children. It is also saying that 65 there is 65% reduction in HIV related deaths. Very good things to know. It is also said that the number of women who are pregnant and suffer from HIV has reduced from 31,000 to 20,000. Third point talks about the number of pregnant women who are suffering from HIV have reduced from 31,000 to 20,000, and the spread of the treatment and antenatal care has risen, has gone up in comparison to previous years. So this is the thing we are aware of, and we are learning from this estimates. Now let us learn some more things. Now NACO, if you talk about the National AIDS Control Organization, started a new kind of a technique, or let's say a kind of a criteria, or a kind of a way to tackle HIV, which is called as the elimination of mother to child transmission. EMTCT, elimination of mother to child transmission. And they targeted the year 2020, the December of 2020, to make sure these targets are reached and the mother who is pregnant or lactating does not transmit the virus to the child. Right? So this was an initiative taken forward by the NACO for making sure that India reaches these kind of avenues. Now, as a part of this, they started programs, they started awareness programs, they started communication programs, they started to take care of the deliveries that was happening. They started to do testing, tracing, and all these things in a proper manner. Most importantly, they spread awareness about how HIV can spread, and a mother can transmit the same virus to the newborn through breastfeeding. So these are the aspects that the EMTCT put forward for the people. Now here they also did one more thing. They were in charge of counseling. They were also taking care of follow-ups so that this thing is successful and this thing is reached in the proper manner. Now this is the simple idea. Now let us learn about how international cooperation also helped us. Now when we talk about international cooperation, there was UNICEF that came into picture. There was WHO that came into picture, and of course they worked with NACO. Now they tried to do the last mile connectivity theory here. They tried to put forth where here, except for there was no connectivity, there was last mile detection. They went for the last mile detection, and it is said that they tested over 20,000 women of the 30 million pregnant women. So, out of 30 million pregnant women, they tested 20,000 pregnant women in the span of 2 years. And with the help of this, they put forth the awareness of the elimination of EMTCT, that is mother to child transmission. Now, as a part of this, they also did free testing, they also did free treatment as well. How did this become successful? This became successful because they were able to reach the grassroots level, and they were able to reach the primary healthcare centers or the healthcare centers of the government, which are there at district level and state level, where they will be able to cater to these kind of issues. Now, the whole point here lies in the work that they have done and the results that have been born out of these things. Now, if the same kind of thing is carried out in the future, the results will be even better, and we will be able to fight this pandemic of human immunovirus in the proper manner, because a lot of people are vulnerable to this pandemic, most importantly because there is no awareness among people that this is how you can prevent this pandemic. Apart from that, we also need to understand about the grassroots level, where these organizations were able to reach, and with the help of free testing and tracing and free follow-up, all this was possible. Now we know that uh, there is no treatment as such for the HIV or the human immunovirus, but then there are a few therapies, there are a few things which will help the virus from stopping to multiply, from stopping to grow, and people will be able to take the benefit of it. Now, let me give you some basics about the human immunovirus so that you can crack the question if it appears in the prelims examination. Now, human immunovirus, as I spoke to you, is the virus that causes AIDS, that is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Now, there is no treatment for this, but the major thing that this virus does is it attacks the white blood cells in the human body, particularly the CD4 cells, also called as T cells in the human body. Now, when these cells are attacked, this leads to weakening of the immune system, and our immune system starts to give place to the virus to grow and multiply, to grow and multiply, and also be affected with all other kinds of ailments like common flu, cold, etc. And the individual's body starts to weaken, and we starts to lose a lot of health, and we start to lose a lot of our defense towards any kind of external bodies. Now, we need to know the source of how this HIV was earliest found. It was identified by scientists in a type of chimpanzee in Central Africa, which was the source of HIV apparently, and it is believed that this chimpanzee version of the immunodeficiency virus was different from the current HIV. So this chimpanzee version of the human immunovirus was called as the simian immunodeficiency virus, and when it has transmitted to humans, it has mutated to become human immunovirus. So this simian immunodeficiency virus most likely to have transmitted to humans and mutated to human immunovirus. Now this virus is transmitted from one human being to another through bodily fluids like blood, fluids from our genitals, our secretions, anal fluids, breast milk, so on and so forth, can lead to transmission of virus from one person to the other. Only these can cause sufficient damage to the human body through the transmission of this virus. First, we need to understand that the individual with undetectable HIV cannot transfer HIV to another individual even if bodily transmission has happened. But if there is identified HIV, then it is sure shot that the uh, virus has been transferred from one person to the other. Now, when the person contracts HIV, several things occur, several stages he goes through. First is called as the acute stage, then the severe stage, and the last stage. These are the various stages. There are several symptoms a person can, you know, face, or a person goes through when he or she is attacked by human immunovirus. That is, firstly, there is weakened immune system. There is high prone opportunities for other infections to come in, even so that even cancer can occur because of this. And then 80% of the HIV infected people would develop a set of symptoms called as the acute retroviral syndrome, where you have a lot of bodily problems, and basically your body breaks down because of several issues like fever, chills, sore throat, night sweats, swollen glands, tiredness, weakness, etc. And it can also lead to death if the thing is not properly cured. Now, how can this be treated? There is no proper treatment, but we all know that this antiretroviral therapy which works, and antiretroviral therapy is made use so that the virus does not multiply in the body, or it is contained in a proper manner. Now, in India in general, the total number of people living with HIV was estimated to be over 21 lakhs in 2017. So in 2020, considering this scenario and this scenario, there might be somewhere in between. And India witnessed 87,000 new cases in the year 2017. So we are talking about this estimates. So this is the scenario today. And there are several organizations and several government initiatives that have been put forth to take care of this virus. So I think our explanation about the HIV and the virus is done. Let us move on to the next topic. Now this topic caters to GS paper 4, ethics, integrity and aptitude. It talks about good governance. Now, as civil service aspirants, and we are writing the GS paper 4, so we need to be aware of what is good governance. Now, this article talks about good governance in Bihar and the reality of Bihar's uh, the aspect of governance and delivery and justice, etc. But that's not relevant for us from UPSC exam. We are working on a pan-India scenario, so let us understand what is good governance or what entails good governance. So first, let's understand the meaning of governance. Textbook definition of governance is that it is a process of decision making and the process by which decisions are implemented. So you're an authority who are making decisions and you're implementing decisions. That's how you're doing governance. But how does this prefix of good add to your aspect of governance? Right? So this is a good question. So there are 8 factors, 8 principles that become principles of good governance. Now these are widely accepted, universally acknowledged principles. Let us learn them one by one. So the first thing that we need to know here is accountability. We need to be accountable to the people. Let's say you're the district magistrate. You're supposed to be accountable to the people. You're supposed to be accountable to the government that you're working for. You're supposed to be accountable to your conscience that you're doing the right thing, and everything that you do is accountable for. It's accounted for. You know what you're doing, and this is how it is being accounted for. This is the most important thing. If you're not accountable, if you don't have the aspect in you that you're giving into accountability, then you're not doing good governance. You have to be accountable to the people. You have the right to be questioned, and you have the right to answer as well. Then you have transparency, very important aspect of good governance. If you're not transparent, or if your work is not transparent to the people, what is the point of work even, right? So if you're doing something under the table, if you're doing something which is not even being seen to the people, or if you're doing something in the form of non-transparent work, how is it even useful? How is it even helpful is the most important question that we have to answer here. So hence transparency is very important. We need to be sure that we are transparent. People know what we are doing, and our work is also transparent in nature, not just what we are doing. Third one is responsiveness. We have to be responsive to people's problems. We have to be responsible to the needs and the wants of the time. We have to be responsive to the work that we do. We have to be responsive to basically to everyone, to the questions of the government, to the problems of the people, to the questions of the people, to the questions of the need of the time. For everything, we have to be responsive. If we are not responsive, then I don't think we can implement decisions in the proper manner or make decisions in the proper manner. Then the fourth aspect that we need to be aware of is equity. If there is no equity, if you don't believe in the aspect of equity, how can you provide the right kind of decisions? How can you provide the right kind of solutions to the problem? There is a difference between equality and equity. Equality means everyone is treated equally, but equity is a deeper aspect where everyone is treated equally according to the needs of their needs of them. So if someone let's say, wants to uh, buy a particular thing, if that particular thing cannot be bought by him, he will come to you for that solution. Now here you cannot consider the person's income eligibility, you cannot consider the person's uh, class, caste, creed, sex, or anything for that matter, but the only thing you can do is provide him with the right kind of solution based on the individual he is. That is the equity aspect. Now you cannot treat him in such a manner that you're saying you have to take care of all these problems and then let us deal with the major problem. No, he is subjected to equity because the simple aspect that he's a human being and we have to provide it in the right kind of manner. So the fourth aspect is equity, and the fifth aspect is efficiency and effectiveness. If the work that we do is not efficient, if the work that we do is not effective, then what is the point of doing the work even? So if some decision is made, if some policy is implemented, it has to be taken forward in the right manner. If the policy remains on paper, that means the policy is not effective. If the policy is not being taken seriously by the people, if the policy is not being implemented in the right manner, then the policy is not effective, the policy is not efficient. So we have to be sure that our work is effective and efficient. Then sixth aspect, rule of law. So we have to follow the rule of law. What is provided by the law should be followed. We cannot jump over this, or we cannot cross this and then think of doing something new, because law is above all and law has been brought out for the good of the people and the good of the society. Hence the rule of law has to be followed. The seventh aspect is participation. Now participation is very important because decisions are not just made by us, and decisions cannot just be made by us or not made just for us. We need people to participate. We need people to tell us this is what we want, this is how we want it, and of course it will be subjected to alteration according to the needs of the time and circumstances. We need to change it, we need to alter it and present it to the people in the right manner, because every individual in the country of India is subjected to good governance, is entitled to good governance and deserves to be governed well. Hence participation, like a participatory democracy, is very important for good governance as such. Lastly, we have to understand that we need to be consensus oriented. So there is, this aspect relates to the participation as well. So if you're not consensus oriented, how can we understand that this policy is doing well? See, let's talk about the farm bills, right? When I talk about the farm bills, we know that government is of the opinion, and most of the people are in the opinion that the farm bills will do good for the farmers, but the very people who are for whom the bill has been brought out are not okay with it. The farmers themselves are protesting against the bill. What we need to understand here is there was no consensus. The farmers were not spoken to, they were not discussed about. Now we also know that the labor codes were passed, and there is a commission called as the National Commission for Labor, which was not consulted at all, because the last time this body sat was in the year 2015, and the labor codes have been bought in 2020. So this is very important. The consensus is important. We need to take the consensus of people. We need to discuss with them as how will this policy work? How will this section work? Is this okay for you? And of course, like I told you, it is subject to interpretation, it is subject to changes, and we need to alter it according to the needs of the time and then present it to the people. Well, I hope this concept is clear. We have understood the 8 principles of good governance: accountability, transparency, responsiveness, equity or inclusiveness, efficiency and effectiveness, rule of law, participation, participatory democracy, or consensus oriented. 8 pillars of good governance, and if we follow each of them, we will be great civil servants, or we will be great public servants. With this, let us move on to the next topic. This is about security issues, and this is a very wonderful take of the author that has been put forth ahead of us. Now, the author talks about how there are terror organizations across the world. He mentions several names like Al Qaeda, Taliban, ISIS, Jaish-e-Mohammed, so on and so forth. Now, if we see the current scenario of the pandemic, COVID-19, we know that the terror organizations have been suffering from lack of funds, lack of resources, lack of so many things. But what we need to know is that these organizations are still active. We cannot undermine the status of these organizations simply because of a pandemic, because everyone, even the country today, is still vulnerable because of terrorists and because of the terror attacks. Now, at this point in time, when they do not have the right kind of funds or resources, what they will do is they will try to reach the minds of the youngsters across the world and across the country who are suffering from chronic social problems like unemployment, like poverty, like not receiving the right kind of things that they need, all these things. Now, when these youth are suffering from these problems, these terror outfits will make it a point to make sure that they are reached and they will take them in as well. Now, if you have heard of the concept of sleeper cells, we need to be aware that sleeper cells are also playing a very proactive role. Even though there are no resources, sleeper cells will do the right kind of thing that they are supposed to do at this point in time. So the whole security scenario must also be aware of this uh, issue with relates to internal security, or let's say terrorism, because we cannot feel that everything is vulnerable now, because anytime anything can happen. The author also feels that organizations, especially like Al Qaeda and ISIS, have to have a special eye, because even during the pandemic, when there was a raid in regions of West Bengal and Kerala, we found out 9 people. We were able to uncover 9 people who are working with these outfits, who are basically terrorists, and they were planning some kind of terror activity. Thanks to our intelligence organizations like NIA and Intelligence Bureau, we were able to tackle these organizations or these people who are working in the form of normal individuals. But this simply points out to the fact about how we should be aware of these organizations that can induce terror in the country. He moves on to talk about the Doha Accord. Now, this caters to your aspect of GS paper 2, and all these we spoke about caters to GS paper 3, internal security. This is a little bit of IR as well. So Doha Accord was signed between USA and Taliban. Now USA and Taliban signed this Doha Accord to move out of Afghanistan. USA moved out of Afghanistan, but USA is not so naive to know that Taliban will not do anything. Taliban will do a lot of things because Taliban has very close relations with Pakistan. And this Doha Accord was a very perilous thing for India, because at one point India somewhat lost Afghanistan, because India would have a lot of influence in in Afghanistan with the help of USA. Now, since USA has moved out, Pakistan will have a major influence there. China is also intervening. Iran is also moving ahead. So all these things will be a problem for India, is what the author says in this article. So we have to make sure that things are balanced. And since there is growth of Taliban's relation with Pakistan and Pakistan's relation with terrorism, and terrorism's threat to the country has very fine relations, and we have to be aware of all these things. Not just fighting the pandemic should be our foremost agenda, but dealing with all these things will also be our foremost agenda. I think the idea is clear here. Let us move on to the next topic. Last but not the least, this article or this news talks about India's sugar industry, and this caters to GS paper 3, that is trade, and also your prelims examination from geography and also from agriculture point of view. Now, India may produce 310 lakhs of sugar, is what the news says. Country has to ship 60 lakh tons of sugar, according to the Indian Sugar Mills Association. Now let us learn a little bit of the sugar industry in the world, in the country. India is the second largest producer of sugar in the world, right? It's the second largest producer of sugar in the world, and sugar is a agro-based industry. These are simple facts. Please make a note of them. This is an agro-based industry, and sugar also depends on the monsoon, because of it's coming from the sugarcane. Now we need to understand the vulnerability of sugarcane. Sugarcane cannot be stored for the longest of the time because it loses the sucrose content in it, right? It cannot be stored for the longest of the time, and it cannot be transported to long distances because sugarcane tends to dry up on the way, and this will be a damage to the crop. Hence, it is established in proper locations and the production happens in a very short period of time because of the nature of the sugarcane crop. In India, Maharashtra is the largest producer of sugar, which contributes 37% to the national output. and 2.6 lakh people are directly dependent on the sugar industry for their livelihood. 2.6 lakh people are dependent on the sugar industry for their livelihood, and this is the sugar industry is the second largest agro based economic activity in the country. Second largest agro based economic activity in the country. So these are some aspects that we have learned from the sugar industry. Next thing that we can learn about is how there is several problems with the sugar industry that India faces today. First problem that we can know of is the low yield of sugar. Though India has one of the largest areas under cultivation and the yield per hectare is extremely low. If you're understanding this, it's quite simple. Even though we are called as the largest producer, but the yield per hectare is extremely low, and that is the biggest problem with the sugarcane producing nations across the world. And this leads to low production of sugarcane in the country. Next problem, like I told you, the short crushing season. The sugarcane has a very short period for in which it should be made use of in crushing or in producing, etc. And this is a huge problem because if it is not there, then it's simply a loss. The growth is simply a loss. And the production trends keep fluctuating because it has to compete with crops like cotton, oil seeds, and rice. So uh, uh, the production trends keep fluctuating, and then there is regional imbalances of growth because some states have very good incentives for sugarcane growers, some it's not, and some it becomes a very high cost of production, and some it's not that high cost of production as well. Now let us learn some trivial facts about sugarcane. At present, the central government along with CACP releases the price called as the fair and remunerative price. This is just like MSP. It releases the fair and remunerative price, which is a formula linked cane price, right? This is a formula linked cane price, and this is what mills would have to pay to the cane farmers. Like I told you, just like MSP, this is called as the FRP or the fair and remunerative price. But some states would like to fix a cane price above the FRP, which the mills would have to pay to the farmers. That's why I told you there is regional disparity, and there is production cost is high in some places, some in low places. Now this price that is fixed by the state is also called as a state advised price, and it is related to the political nature and the economic nature of the country. On the one hand, farmers increase the cultivation of sugarcane crops while the other mills are forced to pay the higher prices. The result was that the arrears to farmers kept rising until the record high. This is a major problem that happened in the last point, but that's not very important for us. That becomes a whole different scenario altogether. But this is the scenario of sugar production in the country. India is the second largest producer of sugar in the world, and the sugar industry is the second largest agro-based industry in India. And Maharashtra is the largest, state that produces, amounting to 37%, and 2.6 lakh people directly depend on this industry for their livelihood. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's session. Write to us in the comment section about the feedbacks and what more you would like to know from us. Until next time, take care. Have a good day.